If I told you that there is rampant and systemic racism in Africa, would you believe me? Well, the fact is, some Africans can't work in other countries within the continent. Why? Because the locals or natives are threatened by them and often rebuke them for taking over their businesses and even jobs. This kind of hate is not new in the continent. It is in fact spreading. This week, we talk about Africa's silent racism, xenophobia, and why it is a cause of concern. I'm Erik Njoka, and now we are Wild of Africa. Welcome to the program. Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi will meet his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame for talks in Angola this week. No details have emerged on what they will discuss, but the neighbors have been at diplomatic loggerheads since a surge of attacks in eastern Congo by the M23 rebel group, which Kinshasa accuses Kigali of backing. Frustration at power cuts and myriad other failings of Libya's feuding factional leaders erupted into protests, spreading anger in the war-ravaged country. The power sector has been wrestling for years with maintenance problems, war damage, theft of equipment, corruption, and more recently, a blockade of oil facilities by eastern factions that has cut off fuel supplies to some power stations. Sudan's coup leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan announced that the army would make way for a civilian government and would not participate in national talks facilitated by the United Nations and regional blocs. Burhan's televised announcement surprised anti-coup demonstrators, hundreds of whom were on the fifth day of sit-in protests after last week saw the deadliest violence so far this year. Sierra Leone has introduced a new family of banknotes, stripping 3 zeros off the leone in a bid to restore confidence in the inflation-hit national currency. The Bank of Sierra Leone announced the move last August, insisting the public's purchasing power would not be affected by the change. A note of 10 new leones is the equivalent of a note of 10,000 old leones, which changes hands for around 75 US cents. A Mozambican park welcomed its first white rhinos in 40 years after 19 of the threatened animals completed a 1,600-kilometer truck ride from South Africa. The rhinos were reintroduced to Zinave National Park in southern Mozambique under an initiative to restore wildlife and boost the local economy. South Africa is no stranger to xenophobic incidents. Time and again, foreign nationals, mainly from other parts of Africa, have borne the brunt. Yeoville Market in Johannesburg, which is one of the busiest markets, was recently attacked and shop owned by foreign nationals were burnt down. Our correspondent from South Africa, Calden Ongmu, brings you a ground report on widening fault lines between the natives and the migrants.
This is what remains of the small shops in Yeoville Market in the heart of Johannesburg after it was torched down allegedly by anti-immigrant group. Most traders who rent stalls here are migrants from other African countries, and they are now not just heartbroken but living in fear of another attack.
I'm scared. What they're gonna come again? So I'm scared again. They're gonna come.
When I hear that my shop is burned, I feel pain, very pain.
From time to time, violent attacks against African migrants still occur in townships where crime and unemployment is rife. Attacks against migrants have sharply increased since May 2008, where more than 60 people were killed and scores injured in Johannesburg in one of the country's worst xenophobic attacks that left 100,000 displaced. The violence began in Alexander Township in Johannesburg after a local community meeting at which migrants were blamed for crime and stealing jobs.
So it's stereotype, and actually what used to actually develop before attack on a migrant, that migrants are here to take our job, they are here to take our women, they are here to take our resources, and we are not enjoying actually the national cake because of large influx. So these are exaggerated things. They have got no base at all. And a 4% population of actually employment by migrants cannot actually change anything or impact this country.
For several months, newly formed anti-immigrant groups such as Operation Dudula and Put South Africa First movement has staged marches and protests demanding the expulsion of illegal immigrants.
We are going to come out and emerge victorious. We are already victorious, but we're going to make sure that we hold each other's hands, even by This is the time. There's no other time. This is the time that we live and die for our people.
Meanwhile, foreigners mainly from other African countries are pleading for peace and unity.
It's very bad because we are one Africa. You don't need to treat the other Africa bad way. We don't know what's going to happen to South Africa tomorrow. You have to fly to Nigeria. We will take you as our brothers and sisters and keep you warm in our country. It's just because the economic crisis. That's why we leave our country to look for a better living.
You know the situation in Zimbabwe. It's worse. South Africa is better. It's worse. It's hunger. Everything is no jobless, no what. Everything is. That's why I'm here.
I come here to look for a job, so that I see in Zimbabwe things are going hard. So I said, in this country is better. I'm looking for something to raise my family, my kids.
The calls for the state to act urgently to address the increase in xenophobic groups across South Africa is increasing amid tensions.
It is utterly worrisome. I don't condemn any form of lawlessness. Hand in glove with department officials, your immigration or home affairs, amicably so.
These are some of the areas where people from various parts of Africa come and settle down. Most of them say they come here looking for greener pastures. But is grass really green on the other side? This is a question only these vulnerable people can answer. This is Kalden Ongmo from Johannesburg, South Africa.
That is a South African situation. But imagine living in a country where you feel unwanted and always in constant fear of being mobbed or even attacked. That is the story of thousands of African immigrants living and working in other countries within the continent. Statements like, "Go home, you don't belong here, let go of our jobs," are quite common nowadays. Concerns are now growing that xenophobia could be creeping back into the continent and taking several countries hostage. But what really made xenophobia so prevalent in the continent? Let's find out in this next report. Pretoria, South Africa, 2015. There was a rumor doing round that foreigners were taking over jobs in the country. The foreigners in question are actually fellow Africans. South Africans couldn't stand that, and so they went out on the streets, looted, killed, maimed, and forced thousands to flee.
They open their business in our country. Why don't they go to their country? We are in our country.
The violence and animosity received widespread condemnation, including from the then President Jacob Zuma.
No amount of frustration or anger can ever justify the attacks on foreign nationals and the looting of their shops. We condemn the violence in the strongest possible terms.
The act of treating other Africans in that horrible way can never be condoned by anyone.
The attacks were so rampant and cruel that it forced other native Africans to run for their lives. But that only worsened the situation as the affected countries revolted. Over time, the vice settled down. Vigils and prayers were held, arrests were made, 7 died, and thousands fled back to their countries, while a few, now branded unwanted guests, stayed back as refugees.
Comrades, we are clear on our message that this operation is penetrating our community.
In the years to follow, angered by the spate of bad publicity South Africa was facing, various activists came together and formed the anti-xenophobia campaigns.
There are people in our country who are trying to take advantage of the anger that people feel about poverty, about unemployment, about hunger, and they're trying to turn that anger onto foreigners, mainly foreigners from other African countries. They're trying to create a fire, a xenophobic fire.
The campaigns were to counter this man, popularly known as Lux. He became the face of Operation Dudula, a controversial anti-migrant movement which is gaining momentum in South Africa.
Operation Dudula started and gained serious traction on the ground because it was addressing what no one was addressing. Problems that people are scared of talking about. Drugs is not an easy problem to talk about. Illegal immigrants is not an easy subject to talk about because you already get labeled xenophobic. The people hide behind the word xenophobia and hide their nonsense and illegal activities behind that word.
From the south, the vice seems to be moving farther north and made a stopover in East Africa, taking advantage of the recent brawl between Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. The conflict is causing an exodus of Rwandese from Congo.
I stay at home, I lock myself in. I stop doing business. Even my business partners start telling me hateful things when I meet them.
Hate breeds hate. And once that outbreak slithers into the society, it unearths the evil that is hidden deep within. Oppression, discrimination, and racism. Traits that need to be checked before they become a new type of a pandemic in Africa. In our previous episode, we told you about the rebellion in the volatile borders of East Africa and how the conflict in the DRC, or Democratic Republic of Congo, and Rwanda is driving thousands away to countries like Uganda. Well, we got to talk to the president of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and asked about the rift and discontent in his neighboring countries and the aspect of unifying Africa. Watch this excerpt from the exclusive Global Leadership Series interview. And let's talk about the animosity in Rwanda and the DRC. We are receiving reports that more refugees are fleeing to your country. The conflict is still ongoing. Lieutenant General Muhoozi, who is also your son, was accused of fueling tensions through posting on his Twitter, which I'm told you have already advised him to stop. But in essence, you are among the leaders who met in Nairobi over the conflict. The presidents ordered the deployment of forces to the area. However, DRC residents are opposed to the deployment. Blame game is very high, Mr. President. What is really causing this rift and what can be done to stop this?
Well, the problem of security in Congo started at independence when Prime Minister Lumumba was killed. And then you had got agents of foreign interests taking over power in the form of Mobutu. Congo has never settled properly. And the immediate problem now is that actually for a long time, Congo has been either supporting or harboring the enemies of other countries. Yes, the external players may make their own mistakes, but the original problem started with the Congo. So what we're going to do is to stop all this and assist Congo to get rid of these groups from outside. And the ones now, the groups from outside, like the ADF and the Interahamwe, they threaten neighboring countries, but they also persecute the Congolese civilians. So then the Congolese form self-protection groups. Some of these groups are apparently self-protection groups, Protection against whom? Against the terrorists from neighboring countries whom the government of Congo is not able to get rid of or is allowed to stay in Congo. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit complicated, but it's easy to solve because we know what it is and we have the capacity. If we all work together, it will be solved.
You have mentioned consistently DR Congo, but you've not mentioned Rwanda. What role does Rwanda play in this whole conflict?
Well, how Rwanda started with Congo was that there was an internal problem in Rwanda, which started in 1959, started by the Belgians, who massacred Tutsis and sided with some local traitors called the Hutu extremists. Now that generated a Tutsi diaspora from 1959, which stayed out of Rwanda until 1990 when they made a comeback. And in the fight, the foreigners decided to back the Hutu extremists to kill 1 million people. You must have heard of that, the genocide. For me, I don't want to say this is one is to blame. We know the problem. The problem started with, as I told you, Congo being either supporting or harboring, and then the outsiders can also make their own mistakes, but the original problem is the other one. Because if it was not there, it would not be possible for Rwanda, for instance, to be involved in Congo 1990. No, 1994.
All right, Mr. President, let's move away from that. Over the past months, the continent has been facing a spate of violence, including in the Sahel, West Africa, Ethiopia, Sudan, and now we have East Africa. What do you think about the role of organizations like the African Union, ECOWAS, and SADC? Are they weak? Do they assist the continent in any way?
They are weak, but they assist. They can assist. For instance, in the decolonization of Africa, when we were chasing the whites and the Portuguese from Africa in Mozambique, in Angola, Zimbabwe, Ian Smith, South Africa, the African OAU played a crucial role by supporting the liberation movements. After we defeated the whites in Southern Africa, there was some relaxation and some diversion, some lack of concentration. That's how we allowed NATO to attack Libya. We should not have allowed it. We should have confronted NATO, but we didn't. So the consequences, all this chaos you are seeing in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and so on. But these organizations can, like we did when we defeated the Portuguese and defeated Ian Smith and defeated the whites in South Africa and in Namibia and in Guinea-Bissau. These organizations have the potential. They have the potential, we have the capacity to really save Africa from these criminals and traitors and imperialists.
Now that you've mentioned that, Mr. President, what do you think about the late Gaddafi's analogy that United States of Africa is feasible and can and should be formed?
I never supported Gaddafi's idea or Nkrumah's idea. It was not only Gaddafi, even Nkrumah believed in an all-African Union government. I never supported that. What I support and what I supported was what is already taking place, the continental free trade area. So I am always with the Nyerere line to form an East African Federation within a common market of Africa. That's our position, or my position, and the position of Mwalimu Nyerere and some of the people who think like us.
Mr. President.
Economic integration for the whole of Africa, but political integrations for parts that are either similar or compatible, like, for instance, East and Central Africa, which are very, very similar or compatible.
The relationship is good and work in progress?
It is very good.
South Africa has been ranked the world's 10th least attractive destinations for mining for the first time in the latest Fraser Institute's annual survey of mining companies. This has raised concerns at multiple levels, and experts feel that the country's mining sector needs urgent intervention. Here now is a special report by WION correspondent Kalden Ongmu.
South Africa's mining industry continues to remain one of the biggest contributors to the economy and plays a significant role in job creation. However, despite great prospects, the mining industry is facing significant challenges and is in need for an immediate intervention.
The Minerals Council has proposed, and had this proposal accepted, that we meet with the Department of Minerals and Energy to address each of the categories in the Fraser Institute survey where South Africa didn't fare well.
South Africa's ranking in the 2021 Investment Attractiveness Index, which is a policy and mineral potential metric, is the worst since 2009. The country has consistently been in the bottom half of the rankings since then, but this is the first time it has fallen into the 10 least attractive mining destinations. Trade unions who play a vital role in the mining sector say they are not pleased with the survey and claim that the report does not reflect the correct picture.
We feel that the issue of wage negotiations is not raised annually. It's normally when we negotiate for multi-year agreements, like 3 years to 5 years. So we don't believe that that assessment is correct.
At the African Mining Indaba 2022 in May, President Cyril Ramaphosa emphasized that the local mining industry is thriving, but infrastructure needs to be improved and changes need to be made for the sector to reach its full potential. Mine workers who are key to the industry often clash with management, resulting in strikes and protests.
I have tried working for the mines, and the problem that we are facing right now is the attitude that we are dealing with the management. Whatever the mine workers are requesting from the management, they are forcing to do the things their own way. When the union tried speaking to the management, they do not want to hear anything because of their attitude.
Despite the challenges, South African mining industry saw growth of 11% in 2021, marking the most significant growth of all industries across the economy. According to Minerals Councils of South Africa, mining production breached over $63 billion for the first time in 2021 on the back of strong commodity prices. According to Minerals Council South Africa, the mining industry employs over 4.5 lakh people, and the industry contribution to taxes is around $4.9 billion. The mining industry contributed over $30 billion to the GDP in 2021. Many describe mining as a continuous sunrise sector in South Africa's economy. But in order to maintain this reputation, stakeholders must be willing to collaborate and address the underlying challenges. Only then the country will be able to compete globally once again. This is Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa. For WION, World is One.
A Congolese refugees providing clean energy to 200 businesses around northwestern Kenya's Kakuma refugee camp with the help from a 20-kilowatt mini solar grid. He used to live at the camp and felt the need to go green, and now he is giving back to the community. Vasco Hamisi is our trailblazer this week.
This mini solar grid is powering about 200 businesses around Kenya's Kakuma refugee camp. When refugee Vasco Hamisi came here 12 years ago from the Democratic Republic of Congo, he had energy on his mind.
I decided to go in green energy first. When I came here, we are really struggling to get light.
He set up Okapi Green Energy with help from donors. It provides work for 10 people, mostly refugees. More than 200,000 refugees live here and in a nearby settlement, but only 1% of them can access electricity from the main power grid. The rest are dependent on costly and erratic options like diesel. Hamisi wants to grow, but his operation is limited.
I've seen that we are still having more potential people who are still coming to ask for connection. But for the power that we have, the 20 kilowatts that we have, we cannot connect everyone in Kakuma.
The venture is crucial for Batisho Tusambe. The plant powers the Congolese refugees printing shop.
With a reliable electricity supply, I have now bought a refrigerator. I sell cold drinks and water. I also make fresh mango juice to sell. We are very grateful because its power really helps us.
Hamisi's hope is to expand the concept to other parts of the camp and keep lighting it up in the future.
And that's our time on this week's episode of Wild of Africa. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned to WION Wild is One. Also, tweet us at WION News with the hashtag Wild of Africa and tell us what you'd want to watch in our future episodes. My name is Erik Njoka. Goodbye for now.